All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started to be conscious of everyone's time. My name is Matt Vady. I'll be your host today. And we are going to, in the next probably 30, 45 minutes, talk through some of the ways that you can, you're going to learn how you can reduce your employer-related expenses by 27% and control them for years to come without having to work with some big national company that treats you like a ticket number and has clunky old technology. Hopefully that sounds good to everybody. Hopefully that's why you're here. And let's go ahead and dive right in. And I sent out an email earlier today, or we sent out an email earlier today. Make sure you stick around till the end of the webinar. Don't forget, we're going to give you a link directly in the chat where you can download a transcript of everything that we're going through here today, as well as, thousands of dollars in HR templates. There's 22 free templates in there. Everything from hiring, performance management, termination information, best practices, all sorts of relevant forms and things you can use to help grow your business and help improve your HR processes. So make sure you hang in there, and we will provide that in a link in the chat at the end. What I'm going to share on this webinar has the power to really transform how your business operates, your small business. So it's important that you eliminate all the other distractions happening right now in your world. Sign out of your social media accounts, stop checking your email, put your phone in another room, because I want you to be able to focus on this thing 100%. Can you give it 100% of your attention? Hit me up in the chat. Just put a 1 in the chat if you think you can give it 100% attention. And in exchange for the 100% attention, what I'm going to do is keep it to less than an hour so that you don't have to sit here for a full hour, right? All right, cool. Seeing the ones rolling in. Thanks, y'all. And if you're watching this video after the fact, you can put the 1 in the comments section on YouTube. How about that? All right. So well, let me go back there. I skipped over what we're actually going to cover. So what are we going to cover? So we're going to talk about what a PEO is, most importantly, how it's going to save you money, or how it can save you money, and some of the common myths that we've heard and that even I've fallen victim to over the years. And I'll kind of talk through my personal journey with this as we go through. I've, in all honesty, done kind of a 180 on PEOs, what they are, what the value is in the market, and where they fit. And so I'm excited to kind of share what I think has changed and what I've seen over the last, nearly 20 years in this industry. So I'll start there with what makes me an expert in this area and what makes our company the right company to talk to you about this today. Well, for me specifically, my name is Matt Vady. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if I don't know you, if you've joined this call. But I've started 2 human resources outsourcing and technology companies in this space, done 8 figures worth of business in this space, served over 1,000 small businesses, hired over 1,000 people. Our company that currently guHRoo has answered more than 50,000 HR questions. We have a 97% client satisfaction rate. But most importantly, we're a mission-based company. We're doing everything we can to serve the community. We give 3% of our business away to nonprofits, 1% of our time, and 1% of our product, which is not necessarily relevant to why I'm an expert in this space. And I would never call myself an expert in anything, but I certainly have the bandwidth and experience to know a little bit about it. But I do think it's important. We like to talk about giving and hopefully positively influence others to give any chance we get. So, all right. So with that said, let's talk about what your life can look like if you fast forward and you look at these ways. Everybody's on here because they want to drive some of the costs out of their employer-related processes, right? So imagine some of the ways you can do that. Imagine what your life would be like after you had one client, one company to manage your HR, your benefits, your payroll. All of your stuff comes over on one single invoice instead of all those different vendors for, one carrier for this, one provider for payroll, one, consultant for that. How much better would your life be? So let's think about that as we go through. And I did just want to bring up, for some of you on here, you might be looking at this and going, guHRoo, I thought you were ERG or ERG. Where's guHRoo? So we just recently rebranded from ERG Payroll and HR to guHRoo. Yes, you pronounce that guHRoo. So if you're searching for us online, you might still find us under ERG Payroll and HR. If you want to check out some of our Google reviews from the hundreds of companies we serve all around the country, if you just simply search ERG Payroll and HR, you'll find all of our 5-star reviews pop right up there. And let me know in the chat, what do you guys think of the new name? I know a lot of you have known for years, and we just recently made this transition. Would love to hear what you think about the new name. So please, positive vibes only. No, I'm just kidding. If love to hear what everybody thinks about it. So let's talk about some of the pains of being a small business and small business owner. So these are pains I have in my own world, right? So when we go to offer and roll out healthcare benefits to our employees, and we have less than 50 full-time employees, we're subject to age banding. So age banding makes sense on a surface level, but then when I start to try to explain it to my employees, or I try to explain it to a new recruit, or God forbid, I try to actually forecast what it's going to cost me to hire somebody and what the benefits overhead is going to be, age banding becomes really impractical, doesn't it? And age banding also does a little something that most folks didn't anticipate. And that's it makes us a little bit more discriminatory when we're going to hire, because in the back of our mind, we're going, well, if I contribute 90% of premium or 75% of premium, and I know this person's over 50 and they're going to be up in these higher bands and I'm going to have to pay more. Now we start actually have some biases creep in that we weren't anticipating. Now, the next thing is we're all sort of subject to this treadmill of somewhere along the line, we got brainwashed into thinking a 5% increase was a good thing on our annual healthcare premium. And I think this goes back to, for those of you with me that have been around for a minute, back in 2008 to 2012 and coming out of the recession, I mean, it was not uncommon to see a 20-30% increase. So I feel like we got conditioned to feel like a 5% increase was actually a good deal. And we're going to look at here in just a moment why that's not true at all. And then obviously, when you look at compliance, I mean, all those things we've talked about, benefits, HR, payroll, they all come with their own sets of compliance at the point of hire, at the point of termination, throughout the life cycle. And like I would say, your employees are your number one asset, but can also be your number one liability. And so what can we do to limit some of that liability? And, one of the cool things that, doing a lot of research into getting this PEO set up and working with others around the country, we realized that companies that work with a PEO actually have 10 to 14% lower turnover. And we're going to look at some of the reasons why here. And thanks, Aaron. I agree. I think it is pretty fun. All right. So 3X. That is the amount that healthcare premiums have increased over the last 20 years. So that is not good, right? So if I paid $500 for healthcare premiums back in 1999, 2000, I'm now paying $1,500 for that same plan. There are very few things that increase at that rate. And it's hard to even wrap your mind around how much this has gone up over the years. But let's look at, we talked about dispelling some of these myths around healthcare, around PEOs, around small business expenses. Let's look at myth number one. Myth number one is related to the expenses, and it's quite simple, right? So 5 times 3 equals 15%. My increases aren't that bad. They're pretty small. They're only 5%. So let's say you were spending $500 a month on average for your employees' healthcare premiums and total benefits premiums, even for that matter. This is on the low end, first of all. So it's pretty solid data here. So let's say 2022, you took 5%, 23 took 5%, 24, you took 5%. You've bumped that up about $80 per employee per month. So you've really brought that up about $1,000 per employee per year, just with those minimal increases. And so now the other thing that's happened here is that you've actually picked up nearly a point along the way too, right? Because compound interest is great. So if I take that 5% the first year, and then I take 5% on top of that number, and then I take 5% on that top of that number, I'm actually adding a point every 3 years in there too, with just this, what's supposed to be modest increase. But whereas that point's now costing me, hundreds, thousands of dollars per year, depending on how many employees I have. So when I take that that $78 times it by 10 employees at the end of 3 years, I've got almost $10,000 more in healthcare premiums just at 10 employees. And that's just after 3 years. And this isn't over the course of 3 years. This is per year increase. It's absurd. I was sick to my stomach when I sat down and did this math. So what do we want to do? We obviously want we want that not to be 5%. We want it to be less, right? And the myth is that there's nothing you can do about it. Well, that's just not true. There's plenty we can do about it. And one of the things when we start to think about it, we're going to talk through here over the next few minutes, some of the things we can do about it. But let's just look at the impact this could have. So if I only took a 1% increase year over year, I would be looking at the end of 3 years, a $15 increase in my monthly premium instead of my $80 increase, which means that I would actually save nearly $8,000 per year versus taking that 5% increase over those 3 years. So tremendous opportunity if we can control and mitigate this cost. So how do we do that? So why are we sitting here talking about ways that we can control that? Well, at guHRoo, what we're doing is we're combining employees from many companies into a single group to reduce healthcare prices. We're also creating access to more benefits and perks, more relational to a Fortune 500 company, and we're also streamlining compliance alongside that. But so you might be asking yourself, well, what's different about this versus another PEO? Well, I actually was having lunch with a friend who shall not be named a couple of weeks ago, and he's a healthcare broker, and he said, one of the great things about PEOs, it's where we send our groups to go cleanse them when their renewals start getting too high, right? So if a company has been taking bad renewal year over year, and then they want to cleanse the group, they'll send it off to a PEO because they kind of get lost in the shuffle of this bigger group, wait for some of the folks to fall off the group so they can come back out to the open market and get better rates. Well, we've got the opposite approach. So we're pre-underwriting every group that we accept into this PEO to mitigate risk and keep a clean pool, because we want to control those costs over the long term for everybody inside the group. So we've got a really unique opportunity here to help to make sure that we're not only providing you with this group control, but also that it's a nice, clean group that we can all benefit from the pre-underwriting and exclusionary policies to keep folks in and out of the group. All right, so let's talk about myth number 2. Small businesses can't compete with big company benefits. So why is this such a big issue right now? Well, what's happened over the last 2 years? Interesting things happening to us right here in Columbia, South Carolina. For those of you on the call that are not from Columbia, South Carolina, it's a pretty small town, mid-sized city. And and I learned the other day that Facebook has at least 10 employees here in Columbia, which is kind of interesting. They have no office presence. They have no recruiters. They have, no place for people to go, no reason why they would have employees here. But guess what them, along with every other company, is doing right now? They're recruiting all over the country for remote talent. And so we're not only competing with the small business up the road from us and the big business up the road from us. Now we're competing with big businesses from Silicon Valley who are paying through the teeth to acquire talent inside of our area. So not only do we have to try to keep up with the Joneses of our local folks as it relates to how we compensate our folks, we're dealing with a nationwide talent pool here. So in a typical, quote unquote, Fortune 500 benefit offering and most large company benefit offering, that we're going to have major medical, we're going to have ancillary like dental, vision, short-term disability, long-term disability. We're going to have HSAs, FSAs, some blend of those things. We're going to have a retirement plan. Going back up, we're also going to have multiple plan options, right? Like I'm not just going to get pigeonholed into one single plan option where it's all my employer could choose because they only have 15 people and, Blue Cross won't let them roll out 3 plans. We're only going to have access to one plan. So retirement, wellness options and perks and, obviously time off policies. So Fortune 500 and large companies, they're able to really wrap together a comprehensive benefit offering. And, the myth has always been that small businesses can't compete. Well, the reality is that we can. So what we've done, and this is a little bit self-serving, right? So even I, as a small business owner, I mean, we're going to be a member of this PEO. And so we wanted to create the type of benefits that are going to allow us to attract, engage, and retain top talent. You saw that statistic earlier about how clients of PEOs retain their talent at a 14% higher clip. Well, we want to be a part of that. And I'll tell you from personal experience, one of the biggest reasons why we're pushing forward with this versus years past, we've evaluated whether or not to start a PEO many years. And right up here in the top right is one of the main reasons why this was the year we moved forward, because we have access to one of the premier carriers. And we just never found it to be the right opportunity to say, hey, you know, nothing against United or Aetna or Cigna or whomever, but in South Carolina, Blue Choice rules. And if we got access to this network, then we would absolutely roll forward. And when we were able to, it became a no-brainer. So we've got Blue Choice as the health plan in here. You can offer multiple plans from Blue Choice. You can pick from the menu and offer multiple plans for your employees, you know, sort of a low premium and then a buy up option. We also are working with Risk MD on the workers' comp side. Workers' compensation is also a component of this, where we're helping people to mitigate risk for their workers' compensation. Working with Transamerica on the 401k, which integrates seamlessly into our payroll system. Working with MetLife on the voluntary stuff. We're working with EAPs, discount programs. We're bringing a full comprehensive offering to market here. And once again, all from one support team, all on one invoice, all in one place. And so we're able to really streamline this process and give you access to a benefits package that you can be proud of when you're going out and trying to recruit new talent, and easily explain it and give them something that they can literally put in their hands and go, oh man, like they've got a legit Benny's package over here. So that's what we can do as small businesses. And so that's really exciting. It's really exciting to me as I'm going out and recruiting. Now let's talk about the next myth. And this one to me, so for those of you that know me, I worked at the largest payroll company in the world for 6 years. And I'll tell you that the people that worked there couldn't even really explain what a PEO was. They couldn't explain how the invoicing worked. Most of them still can't. Most of the people that send the invoices can't. They certainly don't necessarily know what co-employment means, what it doesn't mean. But co-employment element is probably the biggest sticking point on the PEO that offers the level of confusion. I know it's something for me. It's always seemed a little bit scary. If I, as a small business owner, what am I giving up? What am I gaining if in a co-employment relationship? I just don't get it. Am I creating more risk here? Am I mitigating risk? What's the real deal here? So if we're going to combine all these small businesses into one group, we need to understand what that actually means and how co-employment ties all these folks together. So I put together a slide. I think it'll be helpful to understand, and I know it is for me, of what your responsibility is as a small business owner, what the shared responsibility is between guHRoo and the small business, and what's our responsibility. And so when you look at business control, that's still your responsibility, which is probably the biggest misnomer about what co-employment means. It comes to operations, directing employees, hiring and firing decisions, employee advancement. That's all on you as the employer. You maintain full control of all that. Shared responsibility, you start to look at regulatory compliance. Obviously, we're going to have some skin in the game, as will you. Hiring and termination processing is a great example. So you can make hiring and firing decisions. We're going to help you to actually onboard, hire, and possibly terminate those individuals when the time comes. But when you start to look at regulatory compliance, things like that, I always think about the example of, we could tell you all day, good best practices for whether or not you should fire that person, but you may ignore all of them and find yourself in hot water as a result. Obviously, that becomes a shared responsibility and not necessarily on one party or the other. And then what's our responsibility? Well, our responsibility is take payroll and HR and benefits administration off your plate. Right. So we're going to do the payroll processing. We're going to take on HR compliance and management and expertise and guidance. We're going to do full scale benefits administration, everything from open enrollment all through to life event changes and helping get claims handled. And we're going to help you to mitigate that risk so that, once again, we can protect the greater pool, both from a workers' compensation and benefits perspective. And so Co-employment doesn't mean that you cede any ownership or lose any control of your business. Typically, it means that you actually gain some further control as it relates to the HR and administrative side of the business. Now, the only other point of confusion that sometimes people have is like, what's the difference between co-employment and employee leasing? Well, employee leasing is closer to staffing. So if you've ever used a staffing agreement or a staffing agency where they're hiring somebody on a contract basis and they're putting them at your firm, and while you might have day-to-day control, they technically are still the employer and they're paying them and all that. That's more employee leasing. This is still going to be people getting paid from you, getting paid via our systems, but they're still your employees, even though there's this co-employment arrangement that's kind of helping out with the shared group effort. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's look at myth number 4. PEOs are expensive. Well, that's an interesting philosophy, right? So what does that mean, expensive? Well, I think about the who, not how component of this. All these things that we've mentioned on this call, you're going to have to do them all one way or the other. Like, you don't just get out of HR, you don't get out of payroll, you don't get out of compliance, you don't get out of having insurance just because you're not using a PEO. So the question is, do you want to try to build something yourself and cobble together all these different resources? Or do you want to buy something from somebody who's an expert in the field and put together all the best practices, the systems, the automations, along with the expertise and along with all the right benefits? So you can say, oh, well, there's a fee associated with working with a PEO. Well, of course there is. That's because we've taken, going on decades of time to put together all the resources you need to be an employer of choice. And that's where you start to look at this and say, all right, well, what is that ROI? So we keep throwing around this 27.3% number. Well, how do I get to that? Well, PEO saves me money in a couple different ways. So group buying power, we talked about, right? So I'm going to leverage those economies of scale to purchase benefits and perks. I'm going to keep my renewals down. Over time, as the group continues to grow, we're going to have more and more and more buying power. The efficiency, and the biggest thing here, right? Group size does not matter. If you have, so you could very well go out and go, well, Matt really talked up PEOs. This is great. I'm going to go out and find the biggest PEO because they must have the biggest buying power. Well, those big PEOs also take in a bunch of really dirty groups and kind of throw them into the machine. And we've seen plenty of those groups come out the other side and go to the open market and actually be able to get better rates. And that's because economies of scale are not really helpful unless you are really diligent about the underwriting of that group. Efficiency. So we talked about the less vendors. We talk about the systems. So things like, setting up HR automations for things like employee onboarding, performance management, workflows, and, less hands in the pot as it relates to the number of partners that you're working with. Then, of course, established processes. So streamline HR processes and workflows off the rack. We've got established systems for everything that you're going to be doing with your employees from pre-hire to post-termination that we can give them to you right out of the box, or help adjust them in a custom fashion to your workplace and your preferences. So when you start to look at that buying power, the time savings, the ability to just, really get things to market faster as it relates to HR processes, those are some of the great ways that a PEO can help you to drive cash out of your employment-related processes. So what are some of the challenges? So I think that some of the mental and physical challenges you have when you look at these types of options are first of all, just kind of the uncertainty and complexity. And this is twofold. So this is on the HR and payroll and benefits side of the world. How do I handle these things? What do I do? Who's the right partner for me in helping me to navigate this? You're going to have the challenges. Many folks are working with these big corporations with terrible support that they've just been, given this false sense of security that just because a company has, 800,000 clients, that they're somehow a better option than another company. And I should put up with less just because of this perceived security that is really a misnomer. Age-banded plans. I just can't double down on this enough of just what a challenge this is when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to forecasting, when it comes to really managing, creating an effective benefit strategy. You can't have any strategy when you start putting in these age-banded plans. Lack of access to good carriers. So our competition is out here trying to put it on second tier carriers, and it's just not acceptable. We need access to the best carriers in our market, and we need the ability to, once again, give our employees the best available benefits instead of making them deal with this second class benefits that many small businesses are forced to use today. And then, many folks will charge this on a percentage of payroll. It just doesn't make any sense when you look at the PEO model. And what happens is we looked at a group a couple of years ago where when we pulled them off of a PEO, they were paying $100,000 more in administrative fees than they were when we put them onto another model because of the percentage of payroll. All their payroll kept creeping up. They kept, paying their employees more. They kept hiring more highly compensated individuals. The percentage of payroll just kind of rolls it all up into one fee, and you can't even tell what you're paying. And then it just becomes this slow creeping fee that will just eat you alive. So there's many challenges when you're evaluating, how do I handle benefits? Do I go with a PEO? Which PEO do I go with? The choices can be a little bit troublesome. So you've got a couple of simple choices, right? So you can kind of do it the old fashioned way. You can cobble together 3, 4, 5, 6 vendors. You can, try to say, all right, well, if I save $10 here and $20 there, like that's going to add up. But the inefficiency you create is really going to be the challenge. Or you can partner with experts who have done this for a living and know what they're doing and can help you to get this set up and propped up faster. So how do we help you? Well, we mentioned it. We do the payroll and HR processing. We do that fully outsourced. We give you the benefits plans and all the different options. We support you on the compliance, both HR, benefits, workers' comp, all the above. That includes everything from, COBRA processing all the way back down to new hire onboarding. We set up HR systems and automation so that you can spend less time dealing with HR stuff. The HR has been called death by 1,000 cuts. And a lot of that comes from just these little transactions that occur. And, I like the, Twitter has, from the time somebody says yes to the time they get at their desk, they say there are 75 steps in the process. And so, think about all those little steps and how many of them do you have automated and how many of them do you track really well and how many of them do you miss because you just don't get it done every time. Workers' comp, we're going to also, like I said, help you to keep your renewals low there, help you to manage safety and risk. Training and education is a big part of what we do. We have not only the training from our team of internal HR experts, but also our online learning management systems. A part of this has more than 200 classes, everything from mandated sexual harassment trainings all the way through to, how to be a great team player, Excel training, and all sorts of awesome classes in there. We integrate with the most commonly used systems like QuickBooks Online, the workers' comp system, the 401k system. It's all tied in together. And then we do that full benefits administration and COBRA on top of it. So really provide truly one place for everything HR and benefits for your team. So why would you decide to work with us? Well, we've got that dedicated support model. So we're going to give you a dedicated payroll specialist, a dedicated HR business partner, as well as a project manager overseeing the setup and implementation of all of your products and services. That network we talked about, I can't double click on the Blue Choice, Transamerica and MetLife and all the folks that we're going to give you to roll out that Fortune 500 style benefits package right out of the jump. And then transparent pricing. So we just charge a per employee per month. You know what you're going to pay to us. There's no hidden stuff inside of a percentage of payroll. We charge a fair, transparent amount per employee per month, and even charge, if you're on this and you're a nonprofit, one of the other cool things that we do is we actually give you free access for all of your volunteers. So if you've got 150 volunteers, like you're not paying a per employee per month for you to track and manage your volunteers in their, onboarding them and tracking their hours in any of their contact information. We allow you to put them right into the system, and part-time employees are paid at a lesser rate as well in here. So some of the great reasons, but if this is something where you sat through this and you're like, man, this is fantastic, I'd love to talk to you more about this, go ahead and book a time. I'll fire out a link after this is over. We'll discuss your eligibility, whether or not your group would be welcomed into the group. Like I said, we do hold pretty high criteria as it relates to the groups that we are letting in. If you are included or accepted into the group, we'll go through with plan selection, and we'll go through and talk through what the right plans and processes are to roll out to your team. And, we're really excited to be able to offer this to small businesses. I do think it's going to be a huge competitive advantage, and I'm excited to be able to use it to recruit top talent to our firm as well. But as promised, I know it looks like you mostly have all hung in here to get some free HR stuff. I'm going to drop this in the chat right now. Let's see here to everyone. So here's a link with 22 different HR templates and guides, HR stuffs. There's tons of HR stuffs in there. But there's things like performance appraisal, COBRA notifications, acknowledgement of company property, performance reviews, termination, exit interviews, stay interviews, complaint, concern intake, disciplinary action notice, record filing checklist. There's a ton of stuff in there. This is just the first batch of it. Hopefully it's beneficial to all of you. And I've got one message coming in here. If you have any other questions, pop them into the Q&A and I will answer them right here. So what are some examples of the eligibility requirements? So one of the things that we will do, so we'll talk about eligibility in a couple different ways. First, there's some of your more common things like, hey, do we have enough people in the group to bring into the group? So we're trying to work with groups with at least 5 lives that will be quickly growing to at least 5 lives. And then the other piece of that is we are going to actually conduct a personal health questionnaire to get a feel for all of the people that would be eligible to enter the group and what their health history is like. And then we also are looking at that from a risk mitigation perspective, and that, we're not going to take a whole lot of electricians into our workers' comp program when, we're typically serving either gray collar or white collar industries in there. But yeah, participation rates, personal health questionnaires, and making sure we have enough participants, or excuse me, I already said participation rates are a couple of the first things that we're going to look at. Hopefully that answers your question. What other questions do we have? All right. Well, y'all make sure you click that Dropbox and open it up in another window before I close this chat out. I'll let everybody move on with their day. We came in early, which I always love to do. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I really appreciate you joining us today, and I look forward to talking to y'all soon.